Alright guys, TacticalRab here again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Some juicy drama going around just as we start to get into the major. Temp, of course, who's going to play in the Challenger side this upcoming weekend, reveals his worst teammate of all time, the player that he least liked playing with. And it actually, despite a very long career, it wasn't that long ago on the Paris Legion side. The player in question then responds to the accusations. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. First of all, thanks to a couple of you guys for pointing this out to me. I thought it was kind of cool. The message of the day here in the Call of Duty. Well, when you log into the game, it shows you this. This has been a thing in the past, but it's just good to see when they do this stuff. Sure, it might not make a massive amount of difference in terms of, you know, like in Counter-Strike, they have pick'ems in the game, they have the actual matches themselves can come as like a client box in the game and all this type of things. But nonetheless, having it come up as a message of the day to promote the major is always a good sign. So I'm sure that's going to get some more people in this weekend. So hopefully that is exactly what goes on to happen. This was also noted that, well, I don't know what you guys think about this, whether the teams that failed to sign up and completed the sign up not on time were actually, well, were they trying to sell their passes? Because some people probably bought the passes of Boston, trying to then sell them on for a profit. I think that's something that is done, unfortunately. And then, I don't know, maybe other guys just couldn't find people in time. But still, 128 teams were meant to go to the Boston Open. Only 119 of those have actually signed up on time. So I'm guessing the top, like, 9 seeds or whatever will probably get a bye in the first round of the bracket. But I think that begins Friday, doesn't it? Because it's just CDL matches Thursday. Then Friday, I'm pretty sure, is when the Challenger side officially begins. This is the bracket, by the way, if you guys haven't seen it so far. So FaZe, Gorillas, Heretics, OpTic, Ultra Surge, Subliners, Rocker, all of the top 4 teams in 4 respective top 4 matches, as you might have expected. But yeah, it's that Heretics, OpTic one that is definitely raising the eyebrows at the moment. And just as I mentioned earlier today, these are just kind of what the bookies tend to think are, well, the odds to win the tournament outright, as in multiplier and what you'd, you know, get back from what you put in. So, you know, FaZe 2.4. So it's basically FaZe are kind of clear favourites, but then Ultra are second favourites. Actually quite close, really. I don't know, I guess this makes sense, because Ultra have looked great, but FaZe are 7-0, and, you know, haven't lost in any manner at all, such as when Ultra got smoked by Boston. So I definitely think that's probably why FaZe are the favourites here, but between the two of them, like, if you had to predict who's going to win a series between those two teams right now, it's pretty difficult to call. But maybe FaZe on paper, because they're #1 seeds, have an easier run through the bracket. You know, they play Gorillas, and if they win that, they play Miami or OpTic, and, you know, the OpTic series on paper, if that was to be the case, is not easy, but, you know, it wasn't exactly too challenging for them online the past weekends. Then it's quite a way back to the Subliners, then OpTic are considered the 4th favourites, then Miami, and then you really have to go further down there, right? I mean, Gorillas, Rocker, Surge. Interesting that Boston actually have, despite starting in losers, a better chance, apparently, than Gorillas, and even the same as Rocker, despite starting in winners. I don't really know why, because, like, a losers bracket run is tough, but realistically, Gorillas are losing to FaZe, aren't they? So I guess that means basically they're going to start in losers anyway. And Ravens are apparently by far the least likely to do this, which I thought was interesting. This is tournament MVP as well. It's quite split here, really. Simp, Scrappy, CleanX, Cell, aBeZy, HyDra, Sib. So a few interesting options here. It's kind of surprising to see, like, nobody from OpTic really represented, because you might expect someone to be in there, even Envoy and MettalZ here, for example. But yeah, no real predictions that anyone from OpTic is going to win MVP at the major, which is, if you had to predict someone from OpTic, it would, I don't know, would it be Kenny? Would it be possibly Pred, because I think Pred's probably the most likely to turn up and have a really good showing if OpTic were to actually come out swinging in this tournament, but it's of course far from a guarantee. There was also this going around, the numbers from the co-streaming basically that we've seen in the CDL so far. These are the overall numbers this year for basically qualifiers so far. They peaked actually pretty much all the time during the very first weekend, which is usually how it goes, to be fair, but that's when we got the most viewership. And then average viewership has been like 80k over the qualifiers, which isn't probably terrible, but you've got to consider that last year, Scump hadn't retired yet, so there wasn't, basically he was retiring about now, so the co-streaming thing didn't really exist until about now, when he then went onto Twitch and did that. So it just shows that there's a big difference, because the numbers this year in terms of like viewership for the Major 1 qualifiers last year on Twitch, even without the co-streaming, was more, like 25% more, whatever, like 25% less this year than we got last year, even without that. So come like like Major 2, and we were getting like 350, 380,000 viewers across Scump stream and the CDL broadcast and Zoomer stream and all this type of stuff, like that just seems doubtful to continue. But that's the reality of it being on YouTube, to be honest, and look, the teams got paid from this, right? The league got their cash, and then they give that to some of the teams, and then they can afford the salary. So I get it from both perspectives, but it's still kind of unfortunate. I think in general we were just kind of spoiled last year in some ways. The fact that the CDL, their contract went out with YouTube because they didn't really have the numbers to like resign that contract. They then like luck into the fact that Twitch happens, blows up, and Scump retires, and the co-streaming thing happens, and you know they get absolutely blessed by all the viewership last year, and therefore they can sell a new deal to YouTube. So it is what it is. Maybe that'll last the test of time. But of course, someone that has been competing in the CDL for quite a while, and of course now is in the challenger side, is Donnie Temp. So he was on Ace's podcast the other day discussing loads of things, but also talking about, was asked the question, who's his worst teammate ever? Pretty spicy question, but he comes up with an interesting answer. I thought that he might go back to some of like, you know, some of the early days, because Temp's been around since like, you know, Advanced Warfare, playing with some old school teams, and then even he was on that straight ripping team with like Ricky and Studdy and Dashy and the kind of Infinite Warfare. And then it was like, you know, Black Ops 4 came around, let's say, okay, World War 2, but then Black Ops 4, he was on Envy for a little bit, then he was on Splice, and, you know, there were some interesting characters on those teams. But maybe, you know, maybe a bit of recency bias, or just thinking that actually this is very valid. When he was on Paris Legion over the last couple of years, says that no doubt in his mind, the winner of this got to go to Decimate.
Actually, I know my, okay.
There's a real answer? Is this number one?
Yeah, it's probably Decimate.
Oh, why Decimate?
Bro, I feel like that kid could actually be good
if
he's just like lifeless. I don't know. I feel like his work ethic was just so bad, but he can shoot straight. Yeah. I remember one day I just tried to, I said, bro, nothing's working with this guy. McGee would like go to me like, bro, we gotta try to pull something out of this guy. Nothing was working. I was just like, I was trying to get something out of it, because Slasher has done something like that to me, and I'm like, you da-da-da-da, and I start going hard.
Yeah, passion.
Yeah, so Slasher like say crazy stuff to me, it pulls a dog out of me. So I'm like, all right, nothing's working, now I'm gonna just call him a hoe. You know what I'm saying? And then that didn't work, and then he was off the team. He's actually good at Call of Duty, like mechanic wise.
Right, but he's just not a good teammate.
My early pick for the 2022 MVP is Decimate. Kid's an absolute beast, one of the best subs in the game. So excited to play with him.
So I've got to say, in many ways, this is actually pretty funny, just because, I don't know if you guys remember this as well, before we get into Decimate's response, that at the start of the Vanguard season, they were going, I think the CDL were going around and asking the players, who do you think the MVP is going to be, like, you know, who's the best player in the game, and often they'd pick their teammate and they'd give a nice thing, and the funniest one of all of these was when Temp was asked this, and he basically said, you know, my MVP is going to be Decimate, the kid's absolutely beastly at the game, and, you know, he's going to be unreal this season, all this type of stuff, and people were clouding on Donnie for saying this, because, like, I mean, come on, Desi isn't really going to be the MVP, is he? Like, let's not take the piss here. But seemingly Donnie had, like, massive confidence in him to succeed. Then, of course, the season comes round, that doesn't really transpire particularly well, and now, in hindsight, we've now got Temp going back and saying that actually Desi was, like, the worst teammate ever. So it was interesting. Desi was around a couple of years. He was, like, briefly on, you know, it was a stint he did on Seattle Surge, right, when they needed a change to their roster during the Cold War season. There was all this talk that Doug was trying to get picked up. I don't know if you guys remember this. Like, Doug was trying to talk to Octane and get a move to happen, and I don't think Surge ever massively considered it. Eventually, they signed Decimate, though, and that didn't last very long. You guys might remember that Desi, didn't he, like, quit on the team or something? Like, he was there for a couple of weeks, then he decided, this ain't working, I'm out of here, right? Like, I'm just going to dip out, and then they had to make another change or so. So maybe there's part of that involved, but clearly Decimate's one of the guys that can shoot straight. Like, back in the World War II season, there was that, like, Era Eternity team, whatever it was, with Blast and, you know, Desi and Bevels and, you know, whatever they were doing at the time. And Desi and Blast as well are players that are known to have great gun skill, you know, like in another universe, they could have been real top players in the league. Known to be pretty good online, maybe not quite so much so on LAN, and, you know, I guess work ethic was a question, right? Because as Temp says, that this guy, Decimate, he was lifeless. He wouldn't put in the time. He wasn't really, you know, particularly keen to improve and to try and get better and better over time, and that eventually led to the fact that they had to get rid of him, right? And Temp said that there were various ways he was trying to hype him up and get him to resolve the situation, but none of those ever worked, and as Decimate says, you know, I can't change this guy's opinion. He probably has extra hatred for me since he picked up a hacker, which is an interesting statement because, to be fair, when Decimate was eventually gone, then it was Jimbo, right, that came in. Like, I got dropped for Jimbo type thing. So, you know, then Jimbo came into the team. So, I don't know. I mean, Decimate didn't say too much on this, to be fair, in the replies, and maybe it doesn't matter so much to him nowadays anyway, but I thought it was interesting to say at least. Because it feels to me there's quite a few players in that position, really, not exactly that necessarily have terrible work ethics, but just like players, even in the challenger side, that their intention isn't really to be, you know, a top player in the league. Their intention is to just be a player in the league. Like, some guys get into the league and they're kind of satisfied with being a pro. And I think this is the point that JCat was making somewhat controversially, I must say, the other day. And he was like, look, if you want to get out of challenges, your intention can't be to be a pro. Your intention should be to be a top pro or the best version of yourself you can possibly be. Because otherwise, you're going to go to the pro league, you're going to be a bit too satisfied than you should be. And then you're eventually not going to play well and get dropped because it's so competitive out there. And maybe there's evidence of that happening over time as well. Just wanted to mention as well for you guys, the AR player ladder of the year currently looks like this. So Cell has the number 1 spot in like the Breaking Point MVP rankings for each particular role. AR, it's Cell, it's Scrap, it's Insight, it's Sib, and it's Skyz. Very interesting here. Kenny is gone. Dashy is gone from this after the most recent weekends. It's very competitive on the player one, but I will say it's interesting to see nobody from OpTic represented here. And it's the same story on the SMG ladder as well. Prid was in here. I think he might have now dropped down to number 6, possibly. Now, the SMG player ladder is always kind of interesting just because some of the SMG players use a lot of the MCW as well. But since the recent changes, it's been slightly more rivals for a guy like Simp than it has been MCWs. So Simp, CleanX, HyDra, MettalZ, and Envoy. Even CleanX uses the MCW a fair bit, which is kind of surprising, but he's looking like one of the best players in the entire game right now. So those are the respective ladders for those two teams going into the major. There was also, this is pretty funny, like, I do find it incredible how, it's almost like they're taunting us now when the CDL do this stuff, because I think when they initially uploaded this video, Priestahh holds it down against the Royal Ravens. It's like, well, hang on, he is on the Ravens. And like, it's like they can't do a single video where they actually get everything right, you know what I mean? So I don't really understand this one. But anyway, Clay's going to be there again in Boston, as Gwyn says, throwing Clay down this Boston slide might break a hip though. We'll see how they get on, of course, because, you know, the very first rounds, they're starting in the losers bracket. Ravens playing the loser of the New York Subliners and Rocker. So if it's Rocker, that's winnable. If it's the Subliners, that's probably a top 12 finish, to be honest. And just so I thought a bit of a sad thing really to close out the video here from Adam Killer Sloss, of course, inaugural world champion, 2013 world champion, and ever since he retired, he's gone into like being an electrician, I believe. But maybe he's fallen on hard times, I don't know, because he's talking about selling his champ string, which I thought was really sad, really. And as Nameless says, you know, you got to keep that Adam. You're one of the greatest ever. You got to hang on to it, because I think something like that is completely priceless, really. I wonder if, you know, someone like Hex or someone like that would probably be the type of guy to say, all right, you know, Keller, I give you whatever for this ring, and then when you ask for it back because you realize you made a mistake, you can get it back for free type thing. I don't know, but I thought that was kind of sad, really. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.